Looking back at the history of services for people with developmental disabilities, we first look at April 17, 1857, which was the date that the state of Ohio established the first institution for feeble-minded youth in Columbus. 150 years later, almost to the day, on April 24, 2007, the Ohio General Assembly eliminated such words as idiot, lunatic, and imbecile from the Ohio Revised Code. However, the 1802 Ohio Constitution still bars idiots and insane persons from voting. On July 8, 2009, Governor Strickland signed into a law that removed the term mental retardation from the name of county boards. In 1952, the Allen County Council for Retarded Children was formed. As one of the founding fathers of the council stated, starting in the summer of 1952, with nothing but an appreciation of the problem of mental retardation to be solved, and an idea that they could come up with the answer if they worked hard enough, the founders of the Allen County Council for Retarded Children began their effort. They made quick work of it. Already in 1953, the first class was formed, and it was housed at St. Mark's Methodist Church. That same year, land was donated by Yale Bloom for the Robin Rogers School, and the second class was formed at Christ Episcopal Church. In 1954, a fundraising drive was started to construct the first school. Mary Ina Moore, the first teacher, contacted Hollywood celebrities Roy Rogers and Dale Evans for permission to use the name of their daughter Robin for the first school. And by 1955, the new Robin Rogers School was dedicated. There were 3 classes, a hot lunch program, and crafts. And here we have a picture of that building, which has since been added on and still is in use. The Robin Rogers School was the first private school building in Ohio to be planned, designed, and constructed for the special training of severely mentally disabled children. In 1956, the first school bus was purchased. A volunteer music program started, and the group received their first United Fund allocation. By 1959, they had outgrown the space of 3 classrooms. They began a building campaign to build 3 additional classrooms. The first governmental intervention started in 1961 when the school program became the responsibility of the Allen County Child Welfare Department. That was the same year that the Council for Retarded Children started a sheltered workshop on South Collett Street. In 1963, the name of Robin Rogers School was changed to Marimore in honor of the first teacher, Mary Ina Rep Moore. Mary had died of bone cancer at the age of 41. On October 25, 1967, county boards of mental retardation were established under the provisions of Senate Bill 169, sponsored by Senator Harry Armstrong of Logan, Ohio. On January 15, 1968, the Allen County Board of Mental Retardation held its first board meeting. The first board of directors consisted of James W. Wilt as chairman, Richard Hawes, vice chairman, Yale Bloom, Ethel Nelson, Joseph P. Quatman, Helen Reynolds, and Mildred Workman. On July 11, 1968, Miramore Workshop was incorporated. The purpose of incorporating Miramore Workshop was so that the people served in adult services would have an employer that was not a governmental entity. That was the primary purpose for the incorporation of Miramore Workshop. In 1969, new quarters for the workshop and 3 classrooms were leased on 327 South Main Street. Here we have a picture from 1973 of people working in the sheltered workshop. In January of 1974, Miramore School and Miramore Workshop on Ada Road were opened. The dedication was held on January 20, 1974, for both the school and the industries. And history has it that about 900 people attended that dedication. And here we have a picture of the first school building. Here is a picture of within the sheltered workshop of a job. It looks like a collating job. Dignitaries at the dedication of Miramore School and Workshop, we have Monsignor E.C. Herr, James Wilt, president of the board, a gentleman that we haven't identified yet, and Joseph P. Quatman, who was a board member. As time went on, services were added. In 1974, the first speech therapist was hired. A rather historic moment occurred in 1975 when the early intervention program began. County boards of developmental disabilities were the first in the state of Ohio to recognize the importance of early intervention. It was understood that if we intervene with children and provide adequate therapies during their developmental years of birth to 3, that many of their disabilities or delays can be remediated so that they can go forward and have a full functioning life without a disability or a delay. In 1977, we began our first classes for adults. Also in 1977, the first levy was passed by the voters of Allen County. It was a 1 mil levy, which then took us out of the county's general fund and gave us funds of our own. The Board of Mental Retardation, which it was then called, asked the commissioners to okay a 1 mil levy for the ballot in November. Here is an example of how terminology has changed through the years. Notice the headline on this news article is "Retardees Unit Elects Local Man." At least it wasn't idiots and imbeciles, but the word retardee was used to describe the agency. And this occurred when Joe Quatman was elected as the chairman of the board, succeeding Jim Wilt. In 1978, a warehouse was added for Miramore Industries. 1980, we added 4 classrooms to Miramore School, and in 82, an addition was added to the workshop, doubling the workspace. In 1984, pre-vocational services, community employment services, and family resource services were added. In 1985, Miramore Workshop Incorporated changed its name to Miramore Industries Incorporated. In 1986, a 4,225 square foot addition was added to house people in the pre-vocational program. A very significant happening in 1986 was when case management moved from the state to the local level. Prior to that, when case management services were needed, we had to contact someone up in Toledo to come down and handle whatever the crisis was. And usually that was happening on Friday at 3 p.m. when crisis would occur, which obviously meant we had to handle the situation locally without really having a structure to make that happen. But starting in 1986, we were given the authority and the means of handling the crisis that happened from time to time. In 1987, we figured out that people with developmental disabilities didn't necessarily have to work until they died. And so we started a geriatric program so that people could actually retire and have a program to go to. In 1988, we began our partnership with the Regional Transit Authority, and they started running a route out to Miramore Industries every day. In 1990, our first capital improvement levy was passed. We also started our first supported living program in 1990. But I like to always say that even though the state funded and started supported living in 1990, in Allen County, we actually had a client who started the concept of supported living about a year before that. He was an older man who had been raised in an institution and then moved to Allen County into a group home. And one day he announced that he was going to move out of the group home into a home of his own. We spent a great deal of time explaining to him why that could not happen. And we gave him tests, and we proved to him that he didn't have the skills needed to live in a place by himself. He tolerated all of our arguments, but he continued to tell us he was going to move. Finally, the day came when we could envision him loading up what he could on his three-wheel bike and moving down the road to a place of his own. And at that point, we decided to get serious and to help him do that. And so a gentleman by the name of Harold actually was the one who started the concept of supported living in Allen County a year or two before the state caught on that it would be a good idea. In 1991, we broke ground for an administration building, a bus garage, and a warehouse addition. In 1992, the state came through with additional funds for the purchase of residential homes for people with disabilities. And to manage that, we formed a nonprofit corporation called Lodi Incorporated. And their sole purpose is to be the landlord for people that we serve. The state gives us capital improvement monies, and then we in turn give that money to the nonprofit corporation, and they go out and buy houses, which they then rent to the people we serve. The purpose of the nonprofit was to make sure that those houses were held by a private entity so that we would have the flexibility that being governmental does not allow. So as the needs of the people we serve change, we can freely buy and sell houses to meet the current needs. We received our first accreditation through the Commission on Accreditation of Rehabilitation Facilities in 1995. And that is also the year we began to administer residential service funds through Medicaid waivers. In 1998, the state gave us full responsibility over contracting with private providers for residential services. It's interesting that the state chose to give us that authority at the point they realized that under their administration, the program had moved into deficit spending. So we were given the authority to administer Medicaid waivers with the requirement to reduce spending immediately. In 1998, case management and residential services moved into a leased facility on Main Street. In 1999, we opened a facility on Cole Street where part of adult services and case management moved. In 2001, the county board assumed administrative responsibility for Help Me Grow, an early childhood program which is funded through the Allen County Family and Children First Council. In 2002, we received our first accreditation through the Ohio Department of DD. At that time, it was Ohio Department of Mental Retardation and Developmental Disabilities. In 2003, we made use of our largest bequest, which came from Jesse Steeman, and we were able to air condition the school. But that was a year when things started to go poorly in terms of funding. There were state cuts, and we eliminated our first positions. We also closed the Argonne restaurant in order to save additional money. In 2004, the losses continued at the local, state, and federal level, and the board cut $1.1 million out of our budget, resulting in the elimination of 28 positions. In 2005, the Cole Street facility was closed in an effort to reduce our costs. In 2009, as we progress with how we refer to people with disabilities, the term mental retardation was eliminated from the county board's name, thanks to the advocacy of the people we serve. As we look back over the history of the board, the budget and enrollment numbers are rather interesting. The first budget and enrollment numbers we have were from 1954. The budget was $6,795, and 10 school-age children were being served. In 2015, the budget was just shy of $16 million. 273 children were served, and 773 adults were served. 2016 brought about the greatest change probably that we have seen in the field of developmental disabilities. The Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services instituted regulations which prohibited those who administer Medicaid-funded home and community-based services from being a direct provider of those services. And by 2016, the county board and the people we serve were highly dependent on Medicaid as a funding source. The new regulations forced the county board to divest itself of being a direct service provider. Therefore, effective July 1 of 2016, the county board ceased operation of Miramore Industries and the transportation services. Leading up to that change, the service and support administrators worked diligently with the families and with the people served to enable them to choose a new provider. Some of them chose to continue to work with Merrimore Industries, and some chose to work with other private providers. The board will move forward under the new business model to diligently ensure that quality services are available and provided for the people we serve. The service and support administrators will monitor the quality, and the board will continue to be responsible for funding those services which are now provided completely by private entities.